Hello and welcome, everybody. Welcome to the No Name Music Cast. My name's Tim, and this is
Joy.
Now, this is a very special episode of the No Name Music Cast today. We have our first ever guest, and our first ever guest is an incredibly special guest. He's a singer, he's a songwriter, he's a lover, he's a splasher, he's a thinker, he's everything. You probably know him as Hog. Some people call him Hog, some people call him Paul, but I give you Paul Hog Summerton. How you doing?
I'm very well, sir. Thank you. What a great honour. What an enormous honour to be the first official guest.
It is. It only seems fair considering I think Tim's told at least 10 stories with Hog in it since the show started.
Only 10.
I'm spitballing. It's probably 300 and he hid your name for privacy reasons.
Plenty more to tell then. So that's good.
It's there.
Well, for those of you who don't know, I've known Paul Hog. Well, how do you want to be referred to in this episode, Paul or Hog?
I think, I don't know, really. In our relationship, I suppose we have always been Caesar and Hog. So for today, let's be Caesar and Hog.
There you go. So I've known Hog since I think it was 94 or 95 when I met you in the Red Line in Twickenham.
That's correct, yes. The legendary Sunday afternoon evening blues jam. Absolutely.
And I think the first time I tried to get up and jam with you, and you was like, "Oh, sorry, Sonny Jim, I'm rocking out with Russ." I think remember that's what it was like.
Well, how old would you have been then?
I don't know, about 18 or 19
I
or something.
I thought it was just some sort of spotty ragamuffin that thought he could play guitar. Little did I know.
Tim looked like a vagabond.
That's the day when it would all start.
Well, we had some fun jamming out the Red Line, and then of course when Swampy left or was asked to leave Rough Justice in about 95, I joined Rough Justice, and they say the rest is history.
Yes, it is. The early days of bikers gigs and goodness knows what, and I was thinking about the times when. Do you remember that era when we used to steal something from one gig and take it to the next gig?
We've had this conversation because it came up. We're like, so have you ever maybe been under the influence and stolen something and brought it with you? And Tim had a few instances, so now it makes sense.
But we do it with a bar stool once, and we tried to leave the bar stool at the following venue, and of course it was nothing like any of the furniture in the pub. So, there was a bar stool there that everyone was kind of, where the bloody hell's that come from?
Someone trips and falls over it. I hate this stool.
I think we did one with it was like a brewery promotion box where you could put a business card in. And then we took that to another pub. And the pub we took it to didn't even sell that beer. And we put it on the top of the cigarette machine or something.
Yeah.
That took a little extra there. That's some high thinking pranks I see.
I remember a fire extinguisher, but that probably wasn't the best thing to take from a venue.
Not considering, was he the one with the water and the pyrotech? Tim, was that Hog?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, yes. Maybe you shouldn't take fire extinguishers. Okay, we told that is a story that made it onto the podcast. I'll let Tim and Hog explain.
It was Stoke Poges Country Club. And we were asked by this fella to perform at his son's 18th, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Now, his son had absolutely no interest whatsoever in the band, but his dad did. So that was kind of an odd way to start a booking. And we went through this era where and there are many other examples of my strange proclivities, but where I started to use pyrotechnics because the place we used to hire some of the gear we needed, bigger gigs, they had pyrotechnics, and we and in our Who medley, I believe, or it might have been the AC/DC numbers, used to set off these, what they called flashbangs, and they would flash and bang, and there'd be a big cloud of smoke. And it activated the fire alarm, and unbeknownst to us, was a residential care home for people with learning disabilities next door. And the thing was, because of their policy, they realised it was a false alarm, so we carried on playing, and there was all these poor disabled people standing outside in the cold because they had to follow their fire evacuation policy. And we just carried on. So felt quite guilty, but there you go.
And I seem to remember like 2 fire trucks turned up as well.
Yeah, it was proper full on fire
You
drill.
guys are still in there just playing.
Yeah, they said to us, just carry on. Yeah.
If we keep playing, no one will notice that we're the ones that set it off.
Yeah.
Well, all manner of shenanigans and fun we had in the Rough Justice days. And we had Rough Justice running for a number of years. Then you took a break. I think actually you came to these shores.
I did.
You was in New Jersey for a while, I understand.
That's right. I had an opportunity to work with disabled children and adults, which is my kind of regular job, social care. And so we upped sticks, my wife and I, and went over in the spring of 2002 and had a wonderful time. Did a lot of traveling. We did 19 different states in about 18 months. And we went over as 2 and came back as 2 and a bit. So Emma was heavily pregnant and Scarlett was born that November. So, yeah, we made a lot of good friends and did a lot of traveling. And, yeah, it was a wonderful, wonderful time, yeah.
Fantastic. And then when you came back, I believe you was ready to rock. You was rested and ready to rock. And then you got involved in a band called Punch Monkey.
Yes. I had the urge to rock again and joined this band, of which we had a mutual, well, Tim knew the drummer from back in the day, and they were actually a pretty good band, but the bass player was, well, he was a control freak. He wasn't particularly good. And we didn't really see eye to eye. And so we had to...
Tell us what you really think.
We had to remove him from the band. And, of course, that prompted the famous phrase, wake up and smell the coffee, because he just didn't realise we were sacking him. And after that, he desperately tried to retain the name of the band, even though he was the only original member. So by this time, we'd got Caesar, we got Tim in the band, because their young guitarist, he was an excellent guitarist. I can't remember his name now, but he was a very, very good guitarist. He went on to bigger and better things. And so the obvious choice was Caesar. And so we sacked Ian, and he insisted on the fact that it was his band. So we were like, yeah. So even though we brought Rough Justice to an end in 2001, 2002, we just said, let's just call Punch Monkey Rough Justice. So that was the second official incarnation of Rough Justice. And he carried on being Punch Monkey, and I don't think they ever did any gigs. Whereas we did.
He was the only member left, so probably not.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we had that running from whenever it was, 2003 or whenever it was, all the way up until I left the UK in 2011.
That's right, yeah. And we had it was a great time, wasn't it? We had some great members of the band, and yeah, it was a fantastic time.
Yeah, so I left, say in 2011, but I don't know, in my heart, I still feel I'm a member of Rough Justice.
Yeah, I mean, I tried another band called The Mercy. Again, most of the guys in the band were great, but we kind of didn't have the same musical interests. They were a bit more avant-garde than I was. I was more sort of crowd pleasers, and some of their song suggestions we just didn't really agree on. And the keyboard player was very, very difficult, very difficult. We just randomly, I remember we performing Superstition by Stevie Wonder, and he just, right in the middle of the performance, just changed the piano part. So, of course, it threw everybody off, and so we had to have words with him. And
also
and
a very distinct piano part to change up. Like, that's what makes the whole song. Exactly,
that kind of that signature harpsichord sound.
Yeah.
So, we had a word with him, and he wouldn't have it. So he had to be sacked. But the tragic end of this story, and please don't think I'm trying to inject any humour into this, because I'm not. He took his own life.
Oh, wow.
So, it was awful. I didn't know about it. And then I called up the guitarist I think it was to Deppin something, I can't remember. And he said, "Oh, have you heard about the keyboard player? Yeah, he took his own life."
That's terrible. I mean, you have your band banter, and you joke about firing people and all that kind of stuff. But that's a real tragic event.
Yeah. So sorry to bring it down so early in the cast. But there you go. Yeah, it's rock and roll, isn't it?
Exactly. So what we thought we would do is that I asked Hog to put together a list of songs that's important to him, and I thought we could go through those songs. It's like the No Name Music Cast Desert Island discs. However, if you've ever listened to this podcast, it will be 3 songs, and then Hog will tell us a story about why he had the extension built on his house or something like that.
And then me and Tim will grade the work.
That's right. What, do you want me to kick off?
Yeah, so you kick off with the first song. So this is like the soundtrack to your life, No Name Music Cast style.
Yeah. Well, the first one is a song called Alana, which is a song by Marc Cohn. So Marc Cohn in the UK only really had one hit with Walking in Memphis, but I was an early fan of Marc Cohn. And there's a song called Alana, and I think many of us listen to songs and we don't particularly pay attention to the lyrics or anything like that. We just like the song. So I'd enjoyed this song for quite a few years, and this is when we were in America. And it's significant, not because of what the song is about, but because that's when we discovered that Emma was pregnant. So we'd planned a weekend away in New York State at a place called Hunter Mountain, a ski resort. But it was quite a good deal because it wasn't the ski season. So it was a ski resort without any snow, but they had lovely cabins, and we rented a cabin and went up there, and it was a wonderful time. Emma confirmed with the test that she was pregnant. I was in the basement. They had a basement. It had like a hot tub built out of rock. So I was in the hot tub with a couple of young women. This is just going. I hadn't invited them into the hot tub. They just happened to be in there when Emma came down.
The story just took a different vibe. I thought you were going for it completely.
Emma just came down and confirmed that she was indeed pregnant, and I was in there with a gin and tonic and 2 young women. But we was in the restaurant, and it was just a table for 2, a small table, and there was this painting on the wall. And I looked up and I thought, and it said Alana by Frederick Church. And I thought, well, that's funny. I said, I thought to myself, there can't be many Alanas. So I Googled it back in the day, and Marc Cohn had written the song about Frederick Church in the third person. Frederick Church was one of the Hudson River School of painters. And he was quite prolific, but later on in his life, he developed arthritis, so could no longer paint.
Oh.
And he was devastated. But what he did was to build this house called Alana, and every window, the way he designed the house, throughout the seasons, every window is designed to be a picture. So throughout the 4 seasons. So we went to Alana. It was closed, actually.
How good is Hog's memory? Like, there were so many details to that story.
Well, I've told it quite a few times, to be fair, but I just love the thought that he'd knew that he couldn't paint anymore, but just still wanted to carry on with his art. And there's some wonderful lines in it, like, they say my final masterpiece is this house upon the hill, high above the great and mighty river, and my hands could not hold the brushes. So it's a lovely song. So it just reminds me of Emma becoming pregnant.
Now, I know that you've seen Marc Cohn perform.
Well, yes,
many times. And was you? I think in your house, if I remember correctly, when you walk down the stairs, you have a signed album or signed picture.
That's right. Yeah, I went to see him in New York State again. I think it was Long Island. And I took the album sleeve, the vinyl album sleeve, and the meet and greet at the end of it, I asked him to sign it. And he was quite surprised because apparently the vinyl album was only released in the UK, not in America. So, yeah, it's actually up on my wall there. Oh. And when I saw him most recently, was it last year or the year before? He does a few gigs in the UK. At the Union Chapel in London, which is as you would guess, an old chapel. So it's a very small venue. It's only like probably a couple of hundred people at the most. And he just asked for a request. And I was shouting out, Alana, Alana, Alana. And he played it.
Oh, wow.
So it was lovely, yeah.
Well, that's kind of interesting because I would say, I don't know that I would capture him as a one-hit wonder, but I'm not that familiar. Because for us, he wasn't, in America, Marc Cohn wasn't that big of an artist.
No, I don't think he was. Yeah, he wasn't here. He still performs regularly, but he's never had... He won a Grammy for Walking in Memphis. But then
Which is the only song I associate with him.
Yeah, and he does joke on some of his live performances that his first album was his greatest hits. But of course, the footnote to this is the awful version of Walking in Memphis by Cher, where she changes the lyrics to fit. So there's a line in Walking in Memphis where he goes to the Hollywood Cafe, which was an old slave commissary where the slaves used to go. And he met this old woman. And they bonded. She was an old gospel singer. But Cher changes the name because it fits better. And you're like, you can't do that. That's a story. That's an experience. You're not allowed to change that, Cher.
And to be fair, though, I don't really listen to her version.
No.
My mom loves that song, and it was the Marc Cohn version. I listened to it a million times growing up, so I don't.
And he does. I've got a bootleg version of it where he explains the story of the song, and it's absolutely wonderful. He tells the story of why he went there, and Emma and I, when we were in America, we went to the Hollywood Cafe. We went to all of the places he mentions in the song. We went there in a kind of rock and roll tour of Walking in Memphis. So. And that was when I was queuing up. I know there was a queue. Do you remember? I was walking down Beale Street in Memphis, and there was this huge queue of people. I'll Americanize it. A line of people.
We know what a queue is.
Sorry, I didn't mean to be patronising. I do love your red hair, Joy.
Thank you.
Red hair is fantastic. Yeah,
it's a fan favorite for sure.
Yeah. There was this huge queue of people, and I said to one of the guys, "What are you all queuing up for?" And he said, "Oh, saliva." And I thought, what? What's going on in America? Are they hooked on spit? For the love of God! And it was some death metal band or thrash metal band or something.
And if you remember, years later, the guitar player in the second incarnation of Rough Justice, Magic Mike Stoner, he used to love saliva.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yes.
Tim's been waiting for a moment to mention that to somebody for a very long time. Something so specific.
Yeah. But,
well, good deal. Well, let's move on to your next pick.
Yes,
the soundtrack of your life.
Right. Well, my next one is my happy song. And Caesar, Tim, will know this very well. It's Margaritaville by Jimmy Buffett. Jimmy Buffett in the UK is pretty much unknown, but I discovered recently, and this may need to be confirmed, that he's one of the wealthiest men in America. Mm-hmm. He's in like the top 10 richest men in America.
Because he owns all the businesses.
Yeah, all the businesses. That's right. All the restaurants. Mm-hmm. But I just love his way musically. And Margaritaville is always my happy song. So if I need cheering up, I always put on Margaritaville. And it's actually one of the only songs I can play on guitar. And when I say play, kind of just about. Because I love it so much. Yeah.
Well, you know that. I mean, I think we virtually jammed this. You recorded a video of you doing Margaritaville, and then I played along to your video and videoed it. Do you remember?
Yes. Yeah.
I was going to say what you were saying though, where you was talking about the virtually. He's not popular in the UK. That anytime anyone's asked him or we've brought up that subject, like what's one band that you really say that is not nowhere? He always says Jimmy Buffett.
Yeah.
That's your like number one artist. And it's funny because like I have best friends and they have like the license plate that says Fins Up. And everybody knows what that means here. But
the parrot heads and all of that. But if he gigged here, you no doubt it would be quite easy to get a ticket. But in the US, obviously he fills out the stadium still, and he's now in his 70s, isn't he?
I think he is. Yeah, I think if I remember correctly, I think you asked me whether I was interested in seeing Jimmy Buffett. It was mid 2000s, and he was playing the Hammersmith Odeon.
That's right. Yeah,
which is a few thousand people.
Yeah, yeah. And I think possibly one of the issues in this country is people refer to him as Jimmy Buffet. Because we're only familiar with that pronunciation of Buffet. It's Jimmy Buffet.
Vince would be like, well, I mean, he did write a song about a cheeseburger, so he had to be popular here.
Cheeseburger in paradise. Yeah. I love that in that song where he refers to trying to be vegetarian. And it only lasted 70 days.
Which is funny because me and Tim are both vegetarian.
Yeah. Oh, you're a vegetarian as well?
Well, I'm a pescatarian. I eat fish occasionally, but yes.
Yeah, my wife has been a pescatarian for, must be 30 years now.
I don't know. So, probably, what, 2 years, 1.5 years, Tim, for me, too? I don't know. It's been a while for Tim.
Yeah, and a non-ocean-bound creature has not passed my wife's lips for 30 years.
Yeah, I think I went about 5 years myself. I just went off it, to be honest.
Long? 5 years? Wow.
About that.
I will say, though, that my good friend Alan was a vegetarian for many, many years. And for our 40th birthday, we went on a bushcraft survival weekend. And part of that weekend was jointing a rabbit, a freshly slaughtered rabbit, and he decided to end his vegetarianism on that weekend. So his wife, bearing in mind this was 12, 13 years ago, his wife has never forgiven me because she's still a vegetarian and he isn't. And he's gone to the other extreme. He'll eat any old rubbish now, kebabs and goodness knows what, stuff with meat with a provenance that you're not really quite sure about.
Yeah, I always remember Alan being a vegetarian because I knew Emma was a vegetarian. I knew Alan was a vegetarian. I didn't realize. I remember you telling me about that bushcraft weekend, but I didn't realize that's where it ended for him.
Yeah, and that's a heck of a way to go out, having to eat a rabbit.
Yeah, we had pigeon breast, so you can remove the breast from a dead pigeon with just your hands. You have to kind of twist the head off and then dig your fingers into the breastbone, and then you can pull out the breast, whack it on the barbecue. Very nice.
It reminds me of you guys know the French nursery rhyme, the Alouette, Jones, Alouette. It's about literally pulling the head. Have you ever heard that, Tim? Do you know what we're talking about?
Yeah, absolutely.
It just makes me feel like, because I remember the first time whenever I learned that, because I speak French somewhat. And the first time I learned that, and then they're like, just a simple paper pet, just a simple bit, they're talking about, and he's ripping pieces of birds apart.
Really? I've never known what that actually, I know it.
That's the head.
Dans la terre, yeah.
Yeah, and so then he goes, and then it's like le bec because it's pulling his neck off. It is a nursery rhyme about pulling apart a bird.
Well, I never. But then a lot of the old nursery rhymes are quite.
They are. Horrific, I mean, Ring Around the Rosie's about like the Black Plague or something. So.
Yeah, it's kind of a bit weird, isn't it? That these days you wouldn't say, "Oh, I'll tell you what, let's write an amusing song that appeals to children about the terrible earthquake." It just doesn't really happen, understandably. So I'm bringing it down again now.
Well, let's move on to your next pick. What's your next song in the soundtrack of your life?
I suppose it's my guilty pleasure, and it is "How Am I Supposed to Live Without You" by... How am I supposed... Who's that by?
Michael Bolton?
Michael Bolton, that's it. Yeah.
I just started singing it today.
and the reason I've put it on my list is that we come across a live version of it where he did quite recently, probably around 10 years ago, and he's still got, number one, it's my guilty pleasure because Michael Bolton has just got an absolutely outstanding voice. There's nobody that you can't question that. He is one of the best soul singers of all time. Number two is, again, when you actually read the lyrics, it's an incredibly sad story. He says something like, I'm too proud for crying. I didn't come here to break down. It's just a dream of mine is coming to an end. And how can I blame you when I built my world around the hope that one day we'd be so much more than friends? So he's not even with her. So he can't live without her, but they haven't even got together, and it's so heartbreaking. And you think, oh, my God.
Don't ever let Hog talk to Charlie, Tim, my lord. They would have a field day with this one. So my husband, Charlie, is obsessed with the sappiest music. I joke about it. Like, his playlist would consist of this, maybe like some Queen, and then Celine Dion 5 minutes later mixed with like Bat Out of Hell or something.
Yeah, it's a wonderfully, and that was the song that when I think it was Pat Benatar, was it, that did it originally? In the live version, Michael Bolton talks about being a struggling musician, songwriter, and that was the song that started his career, because she had a hit with it, and he got the check for the publishing rights and whatnot, and that was what got him back on track, and the rest is history.
Yeah, and the thing is about Michael Bolton, you familiar with the song Steel Bars?
Yes.
Do you know that is co-written? It's Michael Bolton and Bob Dylan.
Wow, I nearly choked on my hard cider then.
I don't think I would have ever thought that.
Yeah, it's a really bizarre songwriting connection because, a lot of Dylan's music is reinterpreted in different genres, but his songs are open to interpretation, and lots of other musicians have done them. But it was an actual co-write. He co-wrote that with Michael Bolton, and that was the finished product. It's very weird.
And more famously, the Adele cover, which people struggle to believe was written by Bob Dylan when it clearly was. So
yeah, it's a. Bob, have you heard our episode where we went through a rundown of We Are the World?
No, I'll have to.
Gosh, we talk about the Bob Dylan, it's so obvious it's him. Like when he comes in, you're like, there he is.
But the funny thing is that he goes to sing his part and he's not really sure how to sing it. Yeah. And Stevie Wonder gets on the piano and he says, Bob, he said, you need to sing it like you do. And he's like, what do you mean? And Stevie Wonder starts doing a Bob Dylan impersonation and tells him this is how you're supposed to do it. It's in the behind the scenes footage. Yeah. It's so funny watching Stevie Wonder do a Bob Dylan impersonation.
As if they couldn't be any more opposite picture.
He's so unique, isn't he? I mean, you either get him or you don't get him. I'll be honest, I don't get him. But I think because he's so unique, you kind of have to tune into that uniqueness.
I focus on the songwriting. He's not really my cup of tea in general, but his songwriting skills are phenomenal. Yeah. And so that's where he really gets you. He's, we know he's a mediocre singer. We know the guitar skills are pretty good, but it's really his songwriting that I think is what gets people about him.
And the good example of that is the Adele cover, where when they made the album, that was just an album filler. They got to the end of the session and didn't have enough. And somebody said, I know this song by Bob Dylan. How about you have a crack at that? And of course, she nailed it and it became a massive hit. And convincing people that Bob Dylan wrote that is difficult because people are like, what are you talking about, Bob? That's not a Bob Dylan song. Oh, yes, it is.
Fantastic. All right. Well, let's move on to your next track. What else do you have for us? I
think I should go really with I Made It Through the Rain, Barry Manilow. And let me explain. I'm not a particular fan of Barry. I've got nothing against the Manilow. I think he's a wonderful entertainer. He's possibly had, at this stage, a little too much cosmetic surgery. But there you go. If that's his thing, if that's what floats his boat and that's what gives him confidence, then fine. But I Made It Through the Rain is... there's a show, one of those one-night-only shows, and Tim knows very well. And in fact, the clip you posted a couple of weeks ago from the Tom Jones and Mark Knopfler song, that was from One Night Only with Tom Jones. Mm-hmm. So there's a Bruce Forsyth show that was one night only, an audience with, sorry. And Bruce Forsyth is kind of, some might know him in America, but he was very much a sort of Sammy Davis Jr. in the UK, who was an excellent singer, a performer, very good tap dancer, an all-rounder like they used to be. And
yeah, I get what you're saying.
my mum was a big fan, and I was a big fan. And he had he went on to do a number of game shows later in his career, but he was just a great entertainer. And in his audience with, he does one serious song, which he says this is the only serious song in the show, and he says it's a very showbiz a very showbiz song, and he performs "I Made It Through the Rain," and he does a great version of it. I mean, he is a great entertainer. So I went to see his one-man show at the Royal Albert Hall in London a few years ago, and I hung around at the stage door to meet him afterwards, and I was there for nearly 2 hours. And I nearly gave up, and I thought, no, I can't give up now. And there was a ragtag bunch of weirdos.
The details in these stories kill me. That's what he remembers.
Like with programs and and posters from shows from like years ago, from the 50s and 60s, and who they wanted him to sign them. And the security guard on the door, I was at the end of the queue. He said, Mr. Forsyth's only signing two things, because they had loads. I said, no, I don't want him to sign anything. I said, I just want to say hello and shake his hand. So I got to the front of the queue, and of course he'd been performing all night. And I said to him, look, Bruce, I said, my mum was a big fan. I was a big fan. I said, I don't want you. He kind of reached out with his pen. I said, no, I don't want you to sign anything. I said, what I would really love would be if you would sing the first few lines of "I Made It Through the Rain" with me. And you know what? He didn't miss a beat. He didn't even look at me as if to say, that's a bit weird. And he counted me in this backstage, this stage door area. And he counted me in, and a true musician plays through all the rainy days. And it was one of the best moments of my life. It was fantastic. Yeah. He was so gracious, and he just didn't think I was a weirdo. So, yeah, that will stay with me forever.
It's nice. So when you finally meet a hero like that and they turn out to be really nice, the worst thing is when you meet a hero and they're really offish with you or don't want to talk to you, or if you're at a signing session at one of these like Comic-Con events and you meet the person and they just scribble their name and then you're off. It's I don't know. You have this vision of how these people are going to be so great. And it's so nice, like Bruce, when they are. Yeah,
Marc Cohn was actually like that. He was very offish, just didn't really. Because when I recently saw him, I said, you might remember I'm the one who brought the vinyl album sleeve over. And he was like, yeah.
Maybe it's just maybe it's that old guy thing where they just kind of don't care anymore.
Grumpy old man syndrome. Yeah.
Well, as you know, Hog, I mean, it's very common, especially when you're playing in bands. People come up to you all the time and they will tell you stories about, I saw you at the so-and-so. Oh, you threw me your guitar pick. Oh, do you remember when this happened? And you don't have any recollection of that because you're doing it all the time. But to be nice to people who've taken the time to come up to you, I always say to them, that was fantastic. Glad to see you again. I mean, it doesn't really hurt Marc Cohn to go, you're the British dude with the vinyl album.
Exactly,
Yay, thanks for coming.
If he's listening and he'd like to redeem himself, we'll have him on the show next week.
I'll message him.
Yeah, I know you've got him on text. Just send it to him.
Yeah. The next song is a song that Tim will know very well, which is a song called Hidden Secrets and Memories.
Yes.
And it's the only song that I've included of mine because there are very few songs I've written. But this song, again, means a great deal to me because it actually started off as a poem. I was traveling in Europe in 1990. When would it have been? 1990, somewhere around there. And visited an old school friend at Bordeaux University. And she put me up for a couple of nights. And I met this mature student, a woman who was significantly older than I was at the time. And we just got chatting. There was no funny business or anything. We were just, we just were chatting and having a few glasses of cheap French wine. And at the time in France, to buy wine, you would just take any kind of vessel, or any old bottle
where
or
they
jug.
just pour it in.
Yeah, and you just would draw the wine from a pump in the supermarket, and then they would like kind of estimate how much wine you'd got and charge you for it.
How did they weigh it? No.
Yeah, it was fantastic. Anyway, I got chatting to this woman, and we clicked. I say there was nothing in it more than that. But I was kind of in that phase of my life where I was traveling Europe, and I thought I was going to be a poet. And so I wrote this poem about meeting a stranger, and the way in which when you meet somebody, a complete stranger, you can kind of be whoever you want to be, and you can lock away all of the bits of your life that you don't want anybody to know. And that was kind of the basis for the poem. And then when I got back to the UK, went over to America in 92, but came back. And I was with an old friend of mine, a guitarist songwriter called Danny Gray, who's now, he does a podcast actually on madwaspradio.com.
Oh, let's give him a plug.
Yeah. It's called Stop, Look and Listen on madwaspradio.com, Danny Lee Gray. And we were just jamming. He had a home studio. And we were just jamming, and he came up with a kind of chord sequence. And he said to me, "Oh, you're good with lyrics. Just put some words to it." So I started, that poem came to mind. So I just put that poem to the music. And then subsequently, I met Emma, and she was actually with somebody else at the time. It was a bit of an on-off relationship. So when I went to the next rehearsal with him, I told him the story, and he said, "Well, why don't we just add to that song?" So the first two verses of the song are from the poem, and the third verse is the story of, the third verse is when Emma was with this fella, it was on off, and I thought the way to win her heart is to write her a song. So the third verse is, try not to make it difficult, try not to shy away. I'll respect your decision if you go either way. I don't know what it's like, I've never been there before, but whatever happens, I'll love you even more. And we've been married for 25 years.
All this proves to me, Tim, is my theory that I've said on the podcast 20 times. I'm never going to write a song. I don't have that ability. It's never going to happen. I'm never going to make those connections.
No, I think everyone has got one song in them, definitely. And you only need it kind of, because I've always been surrounded by musicians. So whether I could have done it on my own is doubtful, because I can kind of, I can come up with a melody, I can come up with all that, but to actually annotate it and put it down, I need somebody like Caesar or Danny to actually say, right, I want it to go here, there, and they'll say, well, no, you can't really do that because that won't fit. And so, yeah, but I think everyone's got a song in them.
Well, so far, I proved that theory wrong.
And it's one of those songs that sort of burned in my brain, because I think the last two times I saw you in Washington, D.C. 3 or 4 years ago, and then I saw you at the party at your house in 2016. And I think on both occasions I had a guitar in my hand. We just started playing it. Yeah. And it's just I don't know, it's just the chords of that song, and that song is just burned in my brain because I've been around your house so many times and performed it. It's just always there.
And it's a very simple chord sequence, isn't it? It's not a complicated song.
Those are usually the best songs, though.
But it's sort of song from the heart. And of course, they always say, write what you know. And I'm never a fan of these singers sing songs that are written for them. And I don't mean all of them. Obviously, there are many exceptions, like Elvis, who was able to put the passion and soul into any song. But I think those, kind of like your Michael Bublé, who's got a fantastic voice, but just kind of, let's do a Christmas album, and it's like, And I remember doing a gig, funnily enough, with myself and John Jagger, who Tim knows very well. And somebody came up to me at the end of the gig. We did covers. It was just a duo covers gig. And somebody came up to at the end of the gig and said to me, "What's that song you performed? That something to do with being in Margaritaville?" And I said, "Oh, it's Jimmy Buffett, Margaritaville." And they said, "Oh, I love that." And I think that was because my heart and soul was in it, because I love that song. And it does make a difference as a singer if you really enjoy the song. And we back in the day, we used to do some songs that you were kind of sick and tired of, and you couldn't put any passion into them. Because if you sung, I don't know, Barton Toner Overdrive with the thousandth style, it was just like, oh God, and that's why I don't. That's kind of the reason why I came out of it all, because I think as a front man, as a singer, you owe it to the audience, even in a regular bar gig or pub gig, you owe it to them to give it your best. And I reached that point where that stopped happening, where I just couldn't be. I was thinking about the mowing the lawn the next day or whatever, or the fact that I wasn't going to get enough sleep. So that was the time when I had to bow out, because I think you still see some of these guys now that are in their 50s and 60s covering bloody Nirvana, and you think, really? I mean, come on.
Yeah, they just sort of go through the motions. I mean, I'm lucky that I'm 48 years old and I still love playing. I had the passion for it. Everything about it, I love doing it. My gear now is a lot smaller than it was, so I don't have all that stuff to carry around, but I have the passion to still want to do it and still want to perform. Yeah.
And you've had that diversity, haven't you? That kind of moving to the States and playing with different bands and that diversity of the genres that you play and all that kind of thing. Yeah,
because I remember talking to you, because like Hog and I used to have a borough lunch. So I used to work at the London Borough Hounslow, for you bingo card holders out there. And I don't know if you know, Saz has made a bingo card with all the things that Joy and I say all the time.
If you knew that. There's two versions.
Well, Hog used to join me for lunch when I went to London Borough Hounslow. And I remember having a lunch with you one time saying I was just burnt out on playing classic rock all the time. And I I almost set up an audition for it was like a function band type thing, but it was like funk and jazz. And I thought, I might like to do that. It's just like completely different, because I'm just burnt out of playing AC/DC and Led Zeppelin and all that stuff.
I consider, I mean, obviously I'm a little biased, but I consider Tim Stroke Caesar to be one of the finest guitarists ever.
I've heard that from a few people, so I don't think you're alone.
I think it's his sort of perception, the way he kind of picks up on the way that you sing and your timing and your phrasing and all of that. He's a very gracious guitarist. He's not a selfish guitarist. And you work with a lot of guitarists that are selfish, and they're brilliant guitarists, but the fact that the singer's there is a bit of an inconvenience to them. They just want to showboat. But Tim's got a very unique way of, and we were closer, I think, than anyone. The two of us, we kind of were. Our minds were linked. And he knew what I was going to do. He knew all my little mistakes and timing issues and all that kind of thing, and would often prompt me, because there when you do gigs so often, you kind of get that brain fade where your muscle memory doesn't work and you just can't remember the next line,
or you make the same mistake so many times it just starts to come natural.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Like you've learned the mistake, and the person's like, "They're going to do it. They're going to do it. There it is, right there."
Joy, you've nailed. You've hit the nail on the head there, because I think it was it the Who medley, Tim, where there was always a bit where I couldn't remember when I used to come in, and you'd always give me a nod.
Yeah.
And I think you're right, that Joy. That's exactly what I did. I'd learned the mistake, so I knew when I shouldn't come in. I just couldn't remember when I should come in.
Exactly. No, I have the exact same thing. So I was in a production of Cats. I was Ginny Dots, and there's a part, if you've ever heard the Andrew Lloyd Webber music, it's crazy. Yeah. It's all over the place, just intense. Yeah. And there's like a lot of parts where you have to speak the word. And like there's one part where I had to say one word. I wasn't even singing one word, and I could not for the life of me ever find my place. So my friend Bethany would just like kick me underneath the table every time it was my time to say my little part. It's like, could not remember it. I swear I learned it wrong and it never went away.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny, isn't it, how that kind of block in your brain. Can I ask you a question? I've not got a very good vision, but behind you, does that say Bedfont University?
Radford University.
Oh, Radford. I thought it was some sort of Tim Caesar joke that you got a certificate from Bedfont University. Radford. Where's Radford?
We are in Southwest Virginia, and it's about 15 minutes from me and Tim. So we live in Christiansburg, and I graduated from Radford, which is about 15 minutes south of us.
Oh, great, excellent.
Yeah, we have lots of some large colleges here. You have Virginia Tech, which is right by where I work, Radford University, and then going towards Roanoke, you have Hollins. And there's a lot of the big seats of learning around here. I mean, it's no Hounslow Manor or Lambton, but you know.
I sense some biases.
Those legendary seats of learning. Longford Comprehensive.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, that one's my bachelor's degree. I have a degree in psychology with a minor in musical theater.
My daughter is studying psychology and counselling at Bournemouth University at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, I went into HR with my psychology, so I went a little different route than some. But...
No, well, that's, Well, my next song is arguably the best song in the world.
Oh, my God.
And it is a fantastically unique song in which the songwriters list everything that they like. And it's called That's What I Like by Chaz and Dave.
Oh, I knew that there had to be a C&D song somewhere in this list.
And that was one of the ones Tim me listened to.
Chaz and Dave were largely written off as a kind of novelty act, and they called their record label Rockney because it was a combination of rock and roll and cockney. But they were actually incredibly accomplished, talented singers and songwriters and musicians. And that's what I like. It's just incredible because it lists, it's a 3.5 minute song, lists everything that they like. It's just a list of a relentless list. Like one of the verses is Bubble and Squeak and Jumble Sales, Little Richard and Jerry Lee, Bonfire Nights, Southend Lights and Paddling in the Sea, Polished Brass and Copper, Salvation Army Bands, Violins and Old Cochins and Coloured Elastic Bands. My favourite line in that song is coloured elastic bands.
You know what, though? That would be some song if we were performing as another person who's a vocalist. I know I'd forget the lyrics to that, and it wouldn't matter. You could just say whatever you want.
Joy, it's funny you should say that, because when I was looking up the lyrics, because I know most of them, pie and mash and liquor, walk in the band, the rain, William books, comical looks, pianos, tramps and trains, old films on the telly. Anyway... Yeah, I was looking up the lyrics, and I cannot believe this. I'm still not sure that it actually happened. I found a cover version of it, and you'll never, in a month of Sundays, guess who the cover version is by.
I think I know who the cover version is. Can I take a guess?
Yes, please do.
Tori Amos.
Yes.
You said that, Tim. You talked about that on the pod. But we did an episode where Tim made me listen to a bunch of Chaz and Dave songs. I think Tim told us that on the episode.
Yeah, I think Tori Amos's husband is from the UK. I think that's where the connection comes from.
I think she must have just done it for a laugh, for a bet. Because it's terrible for a start. She's doing some sort of comedy Cockney accent and mispronouncing a lot of the words and getting them wrong. But of course, in the world of social media and YouTube, there are still people on that YouTube where it's posted on YouTube saying that they love it and it's one of the best songs on her album, and you think, no, it's not. It's not.
It's because there's these people, I swear I see it all the time. They love the artist so much that no matter at some point what they put out, they think everything they do is good.
Yeah, and that really winds me up because it's okay to not like something. And I suppose there are some of these like legacy artists that just release stuff and people will buy it regardless. They don't even care. They haven't even listened to it. And they just want to buy it and say how great it is. And which brings me on to the next song. So I'm a massive Beatles fan, as most people are. And I was trying to think of a Beatles song that I could pick. But I thought, God, it's just so much. Because they were so prolific and so diverse. And one of the things that always blows my mind with the Beatles is that when they broke up, so after they'd written all of those songs, when they broke up, Paul McCartney was 27.
I know. I literally heard somebody talking about this not too long ago. That's so random. So
27. Having all that. And some of those songs are just, breathtakingly good. That a 22, 23, 24, 25-year-old could get that much into a song is unbelievable. So I'm in awe of them. I think Paul McCartney's a bit weird. That being said, his Glastonbury headline slot last year was incredible. 80 years old, and he absolutely nailed it. And it just shows you that somebody with that amount of talent.
Everything I've seen him play, even at this age, is always just so good.
Yeah. So I picked a song, not a Beatles song, I picked a Paul McCartney song. And about 10 years ago, he did an album of covers, funnily enough, like old school covers, the sort of old 30s and 40s stuff. And there was a couple of original songs in there. There was a song he wrote for his wife, his third wife, Nancy Chevelle, I think it is. And the story goes that they were on holiday in Morocco and in this hotel, which I imagine was heavily guarded because it's not the sort of thing you, as Paul McCartney, you can't go anywhere, can you?
Mm-mm.
So he was in this hotel in Morocco, and there was an old, slightly out of tune piano in the foyer, and they had a local guy who used to play the old tunes, and it was pouring down with rain. And McCartney, his wife Nancy, went off to do something, and he just sat at this piano and started writing this song about it raining and being on holiday and all that, which subsequently became My Valentine. And when you listen to it, it's all minor keys, and it's just a perfect example. It is pure McCartney, where you think, my God, how can somebody who's been writing songs for over 50 years, how can he write such a simple song that is so good? And because I always wonder with those prolific songwriters like McCartney, how they don't end up writing the same song twice.
Yeah, because the thing is with McCartney, I mean, he's gone through so many different genres as well. I mean, he's got experimental dance music that he's written. And, I mean, it's all over the place. And I bought his most recent album, McCartney 3, which he did over lockdown. And like you say, all of those songs, they're McCartney songs, but they're so unique. It's like, how did you not repeat anything that you've written before?
That has been like, I've talked to Tim about, that's one of my things I think that makes someone, it takes them from superstardom to like over the top, is when they can do so many different things. And each piece sounds so unique, but so them and so good all at the same time. It's very interesting.
And it's kind of just so simple. You think, you think somebody with that experience of songwriting would start to write a song like that and think, that's just too simple. And because it's like, it's like all the minor keys. So it goes something along the lines of, what if it rained? We didn't care. She said that someday soon the sun was gonna shine. And she was right. This love of mine, my Valentine. And that's just so simple. And it's like, wow.
When you do it, it makes me feel like he wrote it with the concept of it being like a Valentine's Day poem, or like a little Valentine's Day card where it's simple and to the point. That's the way the song's written.
Yeah. I mean, he's a bit odd as a person, I think, but as a songwriter, I don't think you can.
I mean, you would have to be odd to some degree to be that famous your entire life. I mean, I'm sure 50% of the people on the entire earth know who he is.
Yeah, at least. Yeah, it must create a life where because you couldn't do you can't just think, well, I'm just going to pop down the pub, sod it, because he would be absolutely mobbed wherever he goes, because you wouldn't not recognise Paul McCartney, would you?
No, exactly. I mean, I get the sense that Ringo is the more normal Beatle. And certainly I watched the Beatles anthology a year or so ago. And like they're all very kind of arty and avant-garde and all this kind of stuff. And like Ringo's just like really down to earth. And I get the sense when you see him interviewed, he was the, if you like, quote, normal one.
Yeah.
What song have you got next for us?
Well, let's have a look. What have we got? We've got... I think it's worth mentioning Shook Me All Night Long by AC/DC.
Such a change from the last song.
I know. Well, that's what I was thinking. When I, back in the day, when I first started singing with bands, so I was in a band with my good friend Danny Gray, who wrote the song Hidden Secrets and Memories with me. So we went to school together, and when we left school, a few years after that, we put together a kind of 60s covers band, and it was great. And I still keep in contact with most of the guys, the drummer, the bass player, Matt, the racist bassist, who's a good guy, and
probably not. Given the fact that's his name, he's probably not a good guy.
Yeah, since there was sarcasm in that statement.
Well, somebody told him that was my nickname for him. We have this tradition, I think is the word, of giving band members nicknames. Tim and I, and Matt, the racist bassist, is quite racist. And when he found out
it's
that
not really a nickname, it sounds like the truth.
Yeah, when he found out that I referred to him as Matt, the racist bassist, he thought it was hilarious.
Oh, that makes it worse.
Yeah, that's odd, isn't it? Anyway, I was in this 60s covers band, and with a guy called Servo, who's now lives in Japan, who's a massive Beatles fan, who actually claims, and I've no reason to doubt him, that his Rickenbacker guitar is the same guitar that John Lennon used to play and is on the John Lennon waxwork in Madame Tussauds. He sold it to Madame Tussauds because it was exactly the same specification. So John Lennon is playing his Rickenbacker.
Yeah, it would be, I think it's a Rickenbacker 425, the one with the short scale with the black. Right. Yeah. Black finish with the white parts. And in fact, I met Servo once at a guitar show.
Oh, really?
And he somehow knew who I was because I was looking at the Rickenbacker booth.
Yeah.
And he said, you play with Paul, don't you? And we just chatted about Rickenbackers. And this was 20 years ago or something. Yeah. So I've had a connection. But it's interesting he's moved to Japan. What was his connection there?
Well, funnily enough, so we all went to this kind of working class secondary school that Tim knows in Feltham called Longford. And he was a very shy, mixed race. His dad, I think, was from Bangladesh. His mum was from India. Very shy guy, but a very passionate guitarist. Always enjoyed jamming with him and playing in the band. And he worked for a freight forwarding company and went to a conference one year back when he was very young, when he first started doing it, his early 20s, and met somebody, a senior director from Cohn and Nagel, who just took a shine to him and offered him a job. And it just went from strength to strength. And now he's a senior director with Cohn and Nagel in Japan. And he's a very, very kind, very giving, very thoughtful guy who's a brilliant guitarist and has got more guitars than he's got common sense.
Tim's trying, but he hasn't gotten there yet.
But yeah, always good to jam with Servo, yeah.
And you used to play the AC/DC song with him initially, or?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, sorry, shook me all night long. That's something.
I wondered what I was missing. I was like, okay.
No, sorry, I'd forgotten we were.
That happens to me and Tim all the time.
It's great. This, I'd like to come again. Anyway, so when I left, the band sort of just broke up. Nothing went wrong. We just didn't get any gigs, and so when I auditioned for Rough Justice, they sent me a cassette tape of 3 songs. And one of the songs was Shook Me All Night Long by AC/DC. And I'll be honest, I'd heard of AC/DC, but I wasn't into heavy rock at that stage. I was in a band that we were doing, I saw her today, I saw her face, it was a face I loved, and all that kind of thing. I mean, we did kind of go into a bit more like Hibby Shake and a little bit of Little Richard and all that.
Whoa, stop the presses. The church is going to protest.
Yeah. But we didn't do heavy rock. And when I listened to Shook Me All Night Long, I remember thinking, there is no way I'm going to be able to sing this. Not in a month of Sundays. It was like Brian Johnson's version. And I thought, my God, no, this is not going to happen.
It's mostly just shouting.
Yeah. And I tried it and I thought, oh my God, I can sing it. So I went for this audition And and then we became known for doing those sort of Queen, AC/DC, those sort of covers where you're up in the upper registers. And
and in fact, like a whole lot of Rosie became one of our almost signature songs when we were playing in Rough Justice.
That is a very high song, and it stays. It does not come back down. So once you're in that higher register, you're just there, and it's in your face intense.
And I used to sort of structure the set so it would give me a chance to warm up. And I used to do a lot of vocal exercises before each gig because I knew that if I didn't, within half a dozen songs, I would be shot to pieces and I wouldn't be able to sing it.
Well, you must be really good at flipping from your chest voice to your head voice then, because otherwise you would have lost that voice.
Well, Tim knows there were a couple of occasions where I would be at the tail end of a cold or something and I would still do the warming up, but my voice would go. And then you just can't do it. So you can do your sort of lower register stuff, but you can't do those sort of numbers because it just won't come out. It's like right up there. It's almost soprano. But I mean, I really enjoyed it, but there were times where I was a bit stressed because oh my God, am I going to be able to nail it again?
Those songs are hard on your voice too. Your vocal cords are going for the Olympics.
My next song, which you featured on a previous show, I believe, Feel Like Going Home. Tom Jones, and we mentioned it earlier, Tom Jones and Mark Knopfler. Again, it was a Tom Jones show where he had Mark Knopfler on there. He had... and
there was that Welsh singer as
Welsh
well,
opera
wasn't
singer, Bryn Terfel.
That's him.
He had... who else was on there? He had a... Let me just Google it, and then we can...
Giving it a Google live on air.
No, in No Name Musiccast language, this is called giving it a goog.
I'm giving it a goog. Giving it a goog. I like that.
I got to keep Tim hip and fresh with the words, because he's either 107 or 17. We don't know.
I can't find who was on it, but it doesn't matter. One of you try. Anyway, who was on it was irrelevant. I love this song that he did with Mark Knopfler called Feel Like Going Home, which was a Mark Knopfler Dire Straits song. In fact, I think it was what was that band that he had, Tim, not the Travelling Hillbillies or something like that. I'm mixing up the Travelling Wilburys and anyway, it was written
It was the Notting Hill Hillbillies or something like that.
The Notting Hillbillies,
Yeah, Notting Hillbillies, that's it.
Yeah. So it was a Mark Knopfler song, and Tim Jones, the famous singer, Tom Jones, loved this song, and he always wanted to do it. And as you will see in the video, and I loved the song, so I said to Tim, not Tom, Tom, I said, "Oh, how about we do a version of it?" And so we did it transatlantically, bit like Phil Collins in.
In Live Aid, but without the Concorde involved.
Without Concorde. So we did a version, and I mixed it, and I didn't do a very good job of it because I'm not particularly adept at that. But there is a solo in there that Tim does, which is my favourite solo of any guitarist ever. So I don't think it was a particularly
How much did you pay Hog to come on this podcast, Tim? What was the bill? You have my credit card information. What were we doing with that?
It wasn't a particularly good recording of it, but that solo, again, when I said to Caesar, I kind of want it to sound like this. And he just nailed it, absolutely nailed it. And I'm sure he did it. If he didn't do it in the first take, he probably didn't do more than one or two takes, because
I think I did it 3 times. And then I think what you hear is 2 takes comped. There was a bit at the beginning or a bit at the end I was not happy with, and I just put the bits together. But it's effectively almost one take all the way through, apart from one bit has just changed.
Yeah. So a great song without a doubt, and a great solo.
Also, with this song, it has a very special memory for me because we used to go around your house where you'd have regular party type evenings, and you'd know that it hit critical mass. One, when the Chaz and Dave VHS tape came out, and then as the party was starting to just get to the peak and come down again, the Tom Jones VHS would come out where you'd have to play this.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of have the half a dozen songs where it gets to that point in the evening, and my daughter now knows that, and they've kind of been burned on her soul in her brain, where she knows.
I have a story for you on that. Here's about that. So one time we may have had something that was under the influence called a party, and we couldn't figure out what we listened to the night before, like tips about certain things start coming out throughout the night as the party's ramping up and going down. Well, we could not for the life of us remember what it was. So because I grew up in the age where you could do this, it's a little bit different than a VHS. We went back and see what we played on YouTube all night. Turns out at some point at about 12 a.m., we got on a Gloria Estefan in the Miami Sound Machine thing, and we just listened to "Come On, Everybody, Baby, Shake That Conga" on repeat for 3 hours. So I don't know how many conga lines we did that night. But so that's my example of doing that.
That was the Miami Sound Machine, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, it was the Miami Sound Machine, and then Gloria Estefan, she was put as the front person, and the Miami Sound Machine name sort of disappeared. But I think her husband was over the Miami Sound Machine, and he sort of pushed her to the front to be the big big celebrity.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you what, Hog, let's do 2 more songs.
Okay.
From your catalogue.
Yes. Well, let's go on to. I thought I'd pull out a bit of a wild card because my wife is a massive fan of Fame, the movie and TV series that did really well in the UK, the TV series, but not so much in the US. And we became relatively, well, I wouldn't say good friends, but we met Valerie Landsberg, who played Doris Schwartz, several times, and we've exchanged a lot of messages, and she did her own album many years ago now, and we've been to a couple of gigs, and so become quite close, and she's a wonderful person, she really is, and she did this album of her own songs, and one of the songs is called Endless Sea, which is a beautiful song, and I always said to Emma, I'd love to do a version of that. And Tim and I tried to get it together, but it is just one of those situations where it wasn't a song that you could just knock out in 5 minutes like some of the songs we do. So I found this piece of software online where it could remove the vocal, the lead vocal. And I actually contacted Valerie and I said, look, do you mind if I use this piece of software on your song and do my own vocal? She was very gracious and said, no, of course not, as long as you don't share it online. So I put it through the processor, through the software, took her vocal off it and put mine on it. And I was amazed at how clever this software is. But it's for me, it's just, again, it's all about the stories, isn't it? And it's because back in the day, so this was when we were in America, we went to see Valerie Landsberg in an off-Broadway play. And after the play, we went to the stage door. And actually, it was the front of the theatre. And I said, let's wait around and say hello to Valerie. This is when we first met her. And my wife was like, no, she won't know us. And she came out of the theatre and I said, Valerie, I said, any chance we could just have a chat and say hello? And she's like, who are you? And I said, I'm Paul from London. And she went, Paul and Emma from London. and she, because she's not like a massive high-profile celebrity by any means, but she still keeps in contact with Lee Carreri, who played Bruno Schwartz, who's still a musician, and a couple of the other cast members. And we've seen a couple of their gigs in Liverpool and Birmingham. And so it's just nice that I could do a song means a lot to Emma and means a lot to me. And I was quite pleased with it. So it's not something that I would ever put online because it wouldn't be right. But sometimes with singing, it's just about singing. It's not about people telling you how great you are. It's just good to sing.
Yeah. And there's just I've recorded myself many times singing, and there's some recordings that are just for me and some that I would be willing to put out there. It is what it is.
And the thing is, the other thing is about, you're saying about Fame, how it was so huge in the UK. It's almost impossible to find all the seasons of Fame. I think that there's a UK only issue of like the first season DVDs that you can get. Yeah. But you just can't find it anywhere. And I just remember it was on, I think it was on after John Craven's news round, just before the news.
I mean, I know what it is as far as like it being popular, but I think I've only seen like 1 or 2 seasons of it, maybe.
It was kind of, I think the allure in the UK was it was the New York School of Performing Arts, and it was kind of at that era in the 80s where we were looking at America and it was so cool, and they were dancing.
Boy, has the times changed.
Yeah. Look at you now, yeah.
Yeah.
So it had that appeal to young people, but which they wouldn't necessarily have now.
Well, and the other thing, of course, that was in the pre-internet age. I mean, most people didn't know what was going on in the United States. And like you say, it was exciting. And it was, another country that shared the same language but had a different culture and had different things. And you'd hear about all these musicians that were coming from the United States. So to have a window into that world was just excitement.
Yeah. That makes sense. I would have thought about that. I mean, I can't really think of an equivalent, but there are plenty of movies so when I was little, I'm a twin, and so I loved Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen, and I think the reason I liked them when they would travel is because they were always going to different countries, and that was before the internet, like Tim said, and it was my way of kind of seeing what they looked like from an outside perspective.
Okay, let's wrap up the Hog soundtrack of your life. What is your last pick?
I think my final one has to be a nod, well, more than a nod, really, to country music. And when Emma and I got married, I was, so back in the late 90s, I kind of got into country music. And one of the songs that I bought the 12-inch vinyl of Randy Travis, Forever and Ever, Amen, and loved it. And it was a 12-inch, so it had 3 or 4 songs in it. It was like an EP. That's
a song I grew up with. My mom, Tim was smiling because he does the 90s country is my thing too. But my mom maybe listened to that probably 47,000 times at least. It's a beautiful song.
And I'd never really, country music was never really something that I'd got into, because obviously in the UK, and the closest I'd ever come to it was kind of your Kenny Rogers and your Dolly Parton, but that actual proper country music. So Emma and I chose that song for our wedding song, our first dance. And when we got married, we had the wedding reception. The DJ said, "Oh, I haven't got it," because it wasn't released I don't think it was released in the UK. I had the vinyl 12-inch that I probably got imported or something, but he didn't have it. So it was like, oh no. So in the end, we did, it was So Amazing by Luther Vandross. So that song's always been very close to my heart. And literally the last year or so, as a birthday gift, Emma got me a little framed, and this company just takes a couple of the lines of a song and annotates it and puts the lyrics on it and frames it. So that's up in our entrance hall with Forever and Ever, Amen. So that song is very close to my heart. So and it kind of stimulated a love of country music. So when we were working over there, we went to see Brad Paisley and a number of other sort of less successful, not less successful, not quite as famous, but at the Brad Paisley concert, I remember Scarlett would have been 2006, so Scarlett was 3, and she fell asleep in Emma's arms the entire gig. But it was just, again, it's that situation where country music in America is so massive.
It's actually the number 1 selling genre of music in America, which is hard to believe because, I'm not an avid country listener. Right. But I mean, I do like my 90s country, but I don't go out of my way or seek new country.
Yeah, and we love it because they tell a good story and their heart and soul's in it, and some of the newer stuff like Lady Antebellum, Lady A, songs like that, performers like that, it's just, there's some great music out there in country. In the UK, just kind of never bought into it, really.
See, I've got the perception that country music now is bigger in the UK, though it's not mainstream, but I get the impression that it's far more widely listened to than it ever was when I lived there.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose we've gone past the days of Rambling Jack Elliott or whatever he was called, or all that.
Well, I mean, that's probably globalization because it's more easy accessible because you start down a rabbit hole with kind of artists that maybe sound close to country and then you end up on a country artist or something like that.
Yeah, and there's a lot of songs that have been kind of taken from country songs and made into pop songs. And you can hear that in a lot of songs now with your Taylor Swift and, there's all that. There's a little bit of country in there somewhere along the line.
Fantastic. Well, I would like to thank you, Paul Hogg, for coming on the No Name Musiccast today. As I said, you are our first ever guest. We've been doing this for 2.5 years almost, and we have not had a guest, and you are our first guest.
It's been an absolute privilege. I thank you both from the bottom of my heart. Thank you, Joy. Thank you, Tim Caesar.
Thank you. We're so happy you're here.
Well, thank you. And do you have anything? At the end of the show, we always say, "Do you have anything else before we go?" So, do you have a final closing comment just before we go?
Well, it will become no surprise to you, Tim. That is, we always have been, and we always will be. Rough Justice.
Thank you. See you next week. Bye bye.